the question that needs to be answered clearly is, can you do a truly great restaurant based on Sysco products? And can you call yourself a fine dining restaurant by using those products? As a former Michelin-starred chef, let me just say, you cannot. Now, can you get away with it? That's a different question. Let me just explain why. Can you just pull vacuum bags from the fridge, pour it into a pot, and make that into fine dining? Well, this is not from Sysco. This is not from the store. This is my own ragu. So I'm gonna pour this into a pot to make lasagna today. And in the meantime, I'll talk about why you cannot make a fine dining restaurant based on Sysco slop. Okay? I googled Sysco because I didn't know it. And I understood what people are talking about. I have a lot of opinions about this because I, with my own restaurant, had to make a lot of choices. And this is what kind of choices I made and why I think that the choices we're making when we just buy everything from Sysco are the wrong ones. My recent video about the sad state of the fine dining restaurant scene caused a load of comments, which I am really appreciative of. And something that really caught my eye was how a lot of people are claiming that most restaurants now taste the same and that it's all Sysco slop. So I had to Google Sysco because I am not in America. I am in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I realized that it's one of the greatest food providers in the world. And while we don't have that here in Copenhagen, we have the equivalent type of purveyors. And more so, that I can see a lot of outrage about how the Michelin Guide has partnered with Sysco to launch their guides in the States. And that causes an outrage. I'm not outraged because I wouldn't expect anything else from the Michelin Guide. And before we move on to the main topic of this video, which is, can you actually be a good restaurant and use that kind of product or that kind of produce? We can add a little note to the Michelin Guide's role in all of this, because as the Michelin Guide partners up with Sysco, Sysco does a great move in trying to validate their quality by partnering with what used to be the definition of high-end restaurant quality. Now, I know a lot of people are disappointed about this, and understandably so, but we have to remember one thing first and foremost, and that is that the Michelin Guide has one purpose. It is to sell tires. Yes, tires. You know, the ones that you put on your car? That's what the Michelin sells. The Michelin Guide was created for travelers riding around in France as some sort of way to advertise for their tires. What I think is the key to all this is to understand that while most chefs chase Michelin stars, what they forget is that the Michelin Guide is not some sort of all-knowing being that is there to improve, understand, scrutinize, and criticize, and better the restaurant industry. It's not. It's there to sell tires. They sell tires. That's what they do. You know what San Pellegrino does? They sell water for whoever buys that. Okay? It's not difficult. The difficult part is to get it made, putting it in the freezer in the first place, right? I am of the culinary school that believes that any great restaurant must have, if not as its primary concern, then at least amongst its primary concerns, to source the greatest possible produce. Many of the greatest chefs in history have been known to do exactly that. There are some exceptions to the rule. You have a Ferran Adrià that people would now say, no, it was all about deconstructing this and that, and El Bulli was a restaurant where everything was just pulled apart and it's not focused on produce. But I would like to claim that is not exactly how it was. When I was there in 2006, while everything was absolutely crazy, different, weird, deconstructed, carrot foams, spherifications of mussels, lamb brains with sea urchins, weird shit, there was a very, very important respect towards produce, the primary produce, as you say in Italian, materia prima. Now, the way that they dealt with it at El Bulli was in their way, what they thought was the most important thing. But that was still the base of the restaurant. I myself, when I opened my restaurant in 2010, Relais, that achieved a Michelin star in 2012, I came from Noma as a sous chef at a time when Noma was not famous in the world, but very well reputed in Denmark. So what happens is that producers come to those restaurants, and they come and they bring you their stuff to check out, because it is already, this in 2007, 8, 9, it's already well understood that if you are making some sort of weird leak, you need a restaurant to help you get out there. So when I came from Noma to open the restaurant, Relais, I already had my sort of network set up, which is often what happens when you come from a great restaurant and you open your own place in the at least in the same area, is that you start reaping the benefits of having invested in a close network with producers. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make a restaurant that would be of a culinary high level, but very casual. So Relais was supposed to be a little bit of a restaurant for the people, for everybody, but where the food was fun, right? And it was creative and it was interesting. That was my goal. And I knew that for that to have any traction, for that to make sense, I had to focus on the produce. So I did not want to go to the high end of produce. So in terms of category, no caviar, no truffles, none of that stuff. But I wanted to have high quality local products that were humble as a category, but of high level in terms of quality. And for me, the quality was something that I could only truly understand and perceive if I had a direct connection to it as a professional, as a chef. Now, a little trick for your frozen ragu is to make it very dense and then add more tomato passata when you heat it up to use it. It's easy, doesn't take too much space, and now we need to thin out the base to make a proper lasagna. An example could be that we started off the menu with chicken as the main course. Chicken, at the time at least, was not something you would find in a Michelin-starred restaurant or high-end restaurant as a main course. It would be more sort of beef or venison, or something that would feel a little more classy, right? Chicken was a little peasant-ish. So I thought, okay, I want to use chicken because it's simple, common, but I want to use the best quality I can of chicken, because I thought that within chicken that you wouldn't be able to find anything that would be more, where it would be more obvious of a difference in quality between the shit at the bottom and the best, right? So I connected with producers and I got the best chicken in Denmark, and we made food based on this. We made the main course based around that. As you proceed doing this and thinking this way, you connect with a ton of different producers that all have something special for you. And I believe that the role of a chef is to be an ally and an ambassador for these farmers. Because when you stumble upon a farmer today that has something that is completely out of the ordinary, chances are that it's a madman, a madwoman, a philosopher, a thinker, someone that is so out there that I believe they deserve your full attention and your full support. That, I believe, is the role that a chef can take today, and it has been able to do always, but more so now than ever before. It is extremely important that someone does this, because that is a race that is going towards extinction. It is extremely difficult to make produce that not only can give a great culinary experience, but also creates a sort of diversity within the landscape, within agriculture, and within culture. As everything I do a little too much, right? So what happened to be a lot of producers became a ton of producers, and I was lucky to be able to expand my business with my partners to more than 4 restaurants. And then what happened was that I thought, okay, why don't we make our own farm, right? So we established our own farm, our own market garden, first with vegetables, then we got milk. That's for another video. But the key was that I was trying to go deeper into connecting with the produce rather than expanding for more restaurants and trying to expand for more. And that was a choice. That was the fork in the road that made my kind of restaurants as they were, which I'm proud of, and was one way of doing it, and not the other way where expansion becomes a lot of business. And I respect the fact that people want to make money, and I made money. But there's some compromises that you will necessarily make when you start becoming more corporate, a larger business, and make a different kind of restaurant. This brings me to what causes a lot of people to make these choices, to why they do restaurants this way. There we go. All this talk about diversity is complicated. It makes it much more difficult to do what you want to do, right? So we need to differentiate between an ordinary restaurant at a mid-range to low-range, fast food operators and stuff like this, and what claims to be able to deliver a great culinary experience. Because if you are in a small-time restaurant that is just completely ordinary, it is very, very normal that you are using a provider that essentially does everything for you, right? You buy everything in one place, from your bin bags to your asparagus to your meat. Everything comes in one large truck. It's easy. There's another element to that, and that is that you can then easily make negotiations around price. You can squeeze every little dollar out of a big purveyor because that's what they are in the business for. They just want as much volume as possible because what they do is they play the logistics. The problem for small-time purveyors is always the logistics. It is the infrastructure that is so difficult and so costly. So the bigger you get, the more you can reach, the more you compete on price, and the more the small-timers have a hard time dealing with it. So what I believe is that when you are at the higher level of restaurant, you should consider what kind of responsibility you have towards the small purveyors, because I'm a strong believer that the culinary culture we have now, and I just mean at home, people cook less and less. If we as chefs are not capable of upkeeping small producers, they will be gone, right? They won't exist. I believe that the least you can expect from a restaurant at high level where you spend some serious money is that that money goes into some sort of local economy and to some extent helps local agriculture to flourish. That is how a restaurant can be relevant. That's how a fine dining restaurant can be relevant. And that's where I think it has a place. So when we say that some restaurants get away with doing so-called Sysco slop, even though they're fine dining restaurant, how do they go about it? Well, I believe that there's multiple reasons behind that. But first of all is that the critical mass is not what it used to be. As I talk about and I touch upon in my last recent video about the fine dining scene, it's become so superficial that what is really the building blocks of the food is not clearly apparent in its quality. Produce becomes just the Lego blocks for you to build your good-looking dish. It's not a true connection to a producer. That's a problem. So how do you go about avoiding this kind of restaurant? Well, I believe that you need to choose restaurants that have a very clear leadership that is based on the craft, which means a chef proprietor or a restaurateur that is hands-on to some extent. Bets are the people that are engaged in the restaurant on a day-to-day basis gain more from the choices that are made besides profit. I believe that the great enshittification of the restaurant industry is caused by how chains and groups and big business are making it a corporate world much more than what it used to be, which would be small businesses that were thriving. This is clearly in line with many other tendencies globally, and the small business is suffering. And I think the restaurant combined with the small producer is something that we need to support. And if you have the skills, and if you're a culinary being, if you're a chef, if you're a restaurateur, if you have a business that deals with food, this is the main reason why you should not just choose one purveyor that just delivers everything for you and gives you a good price, but go a little further. Stuck to the bottom. Because I started editing the damn video while this was still on. And that was a bad idea. Now at least it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. But there's a caveat. You have to do it. You probably will not financially reap the benefits of doing it, but I believe that there's intrinsic value in creating connection locally to people that might be as mad as you are if you have a restaurant like that. As a diner and as a consumer, I would say choose restaurants that are not part of a large chain. First and foremost, choose the small shop. Chances are they are more connected locally, and chances are they are saving the ass of someone that is like them, a small shop trying to make things work out. Du har købt den første reol. I believe when people say that all the restaurants taste the same, what they can taste is corporate cooking. It's not real cooking. It's lacking of diversity, it is lacking of character, and it's lacking of soul. That is the Sysco slop. That is the enshittification of restaurants, in my opinion.